Hi, welcome. My name is Vipul and I am MLOps and DevOps consultant. And over here, I will be discussing on Pytest. We are in continuation with the package modularization, creating our distribution file, install it through PyPy, install it through GitHub. Now, the next important tool, next important part that we should know before moving to the actual MLOps coding thing is PyTest module, or you can say understanding how to write a test script using PyTest for a Python script, right? So we are going to use PyTest. That will be a very powerful tool for testing Python code. And here I'll explain why it is essential, and especially in MLOps workflows. Now, to understand the need of PyTest, well, just consider a real-time or real-life use case. Just suppose you are a chef in a restaurant, right? And now you prepare a dish, and before serving it to the customer, what you do? You will test it to ensure it's perfect, right? So why we test it? The reason, we need to avoid mistakes, whether it's too salty or it's undercooked or it is not as per the customer preference. That's why we need a testing over here. Same thing happened in programming. Testing is like testing your dish. Okay, testing is like testing your dish before you serve your code to the others. Just like you before serve this to the others, obviously when you write a script, when you create a software, you have to give it to others for the deployment. So before you give it to the others, you just test it. You just test it through some test script. Now, whether it is an API, whether it is an web app or a machine learning model, okay, we need to make sure that it behaves as per the expectation. Now let's consider the things in MLOps. So when we deal with the MLOps, we deal with pipelines, models, API, and very complex workflows, right? So what happens if any one of these step fails, okay, or if anything which is not as per the expectation, it can disrupt the entire process. Right. For example, here, suppose the data pre-processing script might generate incorrect output due to some faulty logic. Suppose I write some faulty logic and my data pre-processing is generating some incorrect output. Like for example, it needs to generate integer value and it is generating string type values, right? Now, a machine learning model prediction might be misaligned, okay, because of a change in a data format. That can be a chance. So to catch all these issues, what we can do, we use testing framework like Pytest, where we write the flexible, lightweight, and that will be easy to integrate code that will be responsible for testing all the script that you already written. That means it will be a advanced, it will be a automated testing that will test your script before before you plan to provide this script for the operation team for the deployment, isn't it? So that's why we use it. Now, why testing is very critical in MLOps? The thing, in MLOps, we are going to work with continuous integration and deployment pipeline. So because obviously that will be the CI and CD will be the backbone for this whole MLOps part. So CI CD is possible through automated testing. So automated testing basically ensures that every change in the code base is validated, right? Like suppose if you are not doing the automated testing, so what you have to do, it's like for every change, you are not so sure that, okay, if I made some changes, whether that change is will work good with the pre-written codes or not. Okay, like suppose because everything we're not changing, out of total code you are changing suppose 2% part of it, so still 98% part is there. So is it like the 2% changes that I made is should not affect badly the rest of the code, right? So that's what we need to test, correct? So every change in the code base should be validated. That is possible through automated testing. Now, new features or updates should not break the existing functionalities. Okay, the functionality that is already running, that should not get breakdown. So that can be ensured through automated testing or writing or having a test script. Models and scripts produce accurate results after the deployment. That is very important. Okay, it's not like that I just made some code, I wrote the code, and when I had given it to the operation team, and that guy is deploying, and everything gets failed. Okay, so to avoid such kind of hindrance or such kind of loss of time, we can go with the uh, proper testing process. and we can build a automated testing that can help us in better machine learning model development and deployment, or creating a better integration between development and deployment. There are some examples that I had given over here. Suppose you are deploying a model API that predicts some house prices. Now, what if your API fails to handle the negative values? That we can just test at the very beginning only. Or suppose the pre-processing step mistakenly normalize the categorical data, because categorical data should not be normalized, right? So we can just write a script that will test whether categorical data is getting normalized or not normalized, right? So with Pytest, you can write the test cases to catch such issues, right? So that's the purpose of Pytest. Now, when we are going with this thing, what we will do? We'll try to understand the importance of testing in real life and MLOps. Now we'll do what? We'll learn how to use Pytest. Okay. So for that, Pytest is a Python library that, and it is very simple for beginner, and it is very powerful also for advanced testing needs, right? So there'll be a structure of project that we are going to use. It's a very simple project that we are going to create over here. So that's structurally very simple. First of all, we'll have a calculator. This is a Pytest example folder I created. So in this Pytest example, I create a folder called calculator. Okay. All right. And thereafter within this, we will have a file called main.py. So let's say I'll have a main.py. Okay. And in this main.py, we'll write the logic of very simple logic of calculator. Let's say def add x comma y, and I'll say return x plus y. Okay. And thereafter def subtract x comma y, and I'll say what? Return x minus y. Okay, so these two things I'll write. Now I have to write a test script to test whether these functions are working properly or not. Okay, so how to test these particular functions? So for that purpose, I'll just create one more file over here, and the file name I'll give over here as a let's say anything. Let's say test calculator.py. Okay, so in this case, I'll import a module called import Pytest. Okay, now when I am importing this Pytest module, it should be installed in my system. In case if it is not installed, make sure you install it, pip install Pytest. Okay, so it will get installed into your system. Thereafter, we'll have a main file. So from main, I'll import those two functions that we created, add and subtract. All right. Now what happened? We know we have two functions and both the functions we imported. Now I'll do what? I'll write the test case over here, def test addition. Okay. So make sure that whenever you are creating any test case, okay, that should be created within a function, and that function should have test word as a suffix or as a prefix. Okay, that is very important, because when we run the Pytest module, that will only execute these functions whether if you had given the test keyword, so that Pytest can understand, okay, these functions I have to test. Now while doing the test addition, what you required over here the thing like addition or subtraction, right? So what we do, we'll just call add function because it's add, right? So in the add, let's say 3 comma 4. Okay, 3 or 5. So what 3 or 5 should be there? It should be 8, right? So I'll just check assert. Okay, assertion, that will just verify whether this thing is satisfied or not satisfied. You can define multiple test cases over here. Okay, let's say I'm giving over here a negative value, -1, -3. That should give me what? -4. All right. So this is the add thing. Same way we can use assert. Okay, and I can check the subtract as well. Okay, and let's say I'm feeding 3 comma 4. That should be equals to what? Minus of 1, because 3 minus 4 is 1. That is what we did. X minus y, so it should give me minus of 1. Same way, I'll give over here, let's say assert -1, some negative value. So -1 minus, it will become 4. So 4 minus 1, it should be 3. Okay, correct. So this should be the output. So we're just testing whether this thing will work or not work, right? So I'll just save this guy. Okay, and thereafter we'll go to the location where this file is actually saved, right? Okay, so this is a location where my folder or the project folder where my everything is saved. So this is my Pytest example. Okay, and here is a calculator, and here we have a test folder and all. So at this location, what I do, I'll just launch the command prompt. Okay, so now once I launch the command prompt, I'll show you the command prompt part. So command prompt is over here, and here I have to just type Pytest, that's it. Okay, so when I type Pytest, whatever the file that I have, okay, and if Pytest is imported over here, it will just test it. So when it is testing, what it is saying, one failed, one passed. Which one is passed? The first one is passed. Okay, that is your test add, and test subtract, it is showing some exception over here. That is saying that it is not passed. So in this case, this thing is not passed. Okay, that means -1 -3 I had used over here what, 3. So if you will subtract, let's see, if I have -1 minus -3. Okay, so what it should be, it should be -1 plus 4, sorry, plus 3. Okay, so 3 minus 1, it should be 2, right? Isn't it? But here it is giving me what, I had given some incorrect values over here. That's why, sorry, here, okay, fine. Here I had used add function. Okay, so let's see. Here I had used actually incorrect function. Let me just correct it. Let's check it out. So you can see whenever the condition doesn't match, it generates that test failed. Okay, if I use subtract over here, okay, and it should be what, 2, right? Now save it. Okay, again I'll go to the same command prompt. Again I'll check it, Pytest. So it says both the condition passed. Both the condition passed means what? That means whatever the logic that I have used over here, okay, that means this function I created is functioning correctly. Okay, there is no problem in these functions. For example, here I have to write def, let me check one more, divide. Okay, and divide x comma y, and because of any reason I did what, I used over here x multiplied by y. Okay, I made a mistake, right? Okay, so now how can you test it, right? So if I wrote a program, okay, and I'm not sure I wrote a correct or incorrect logic, so the whatever the logic that I'm writing, I must be knowing what, the output of that. So what I can do, I can just run over here def test divide. So if I will use test divide, what will happen? Automatically when I call Pytest, it will, where I am calling the Pytest, I am calling the Pytest at a location where my file is saved. Okay, that means my file is saved over here. So I'm calling Pytest over here. So when I call Pytest, it automatically recognizes the file in which test condition is defined. It is important that the file should have a name test, suffix test should be there, so that Pytest will recognize that, okay, this is a testing file. Once this testing file executed, whatever the case that you are giving over here under test functions, that will be triggered. So now here I'll call over here, the function name is divide, isn't it? Divide is a function name. Just make sure we are calling a correct function name, right? Now I'll call this divide function over here. Okay, and here. Okay, and here I'll give something like, let's say 12 comma 4. So it should be 3. Okay, and here let's say 16 comma minus 4. So it should be what, -4, right? So this should be the output. Okay, so now if I will, that means divide, if I will do 12 by 4, so 3 should be the output. Now I'll go and test over here. That means I'll again trigger the things. So a new entity is added, a new logic is added, so old logic should not be affected. Now if I'll execute it, so you can see 2 tests passed, 1 failed. Okay, what it is saying, assert, it is getting 3, but I'm expecting 3, but actual output I'm getting is 48. Why? Because 12 into 4, 48. I had given multiplication sign, right? That means if the condition is failed, so I may have two things. Either I wrote over here wrong test condition or wrong test cases, or I did something wrong over here. So when I come here, I'll make it divide, save this thing, and again I'll test it. Okay. So now things worked properly. All the three conditions passed over here. All right. So this is something that we are going to use in the MLOps. So it's like when we write any pre-processing script that is expected to remove the outliers. So what we can do, we can just write a test case to ensure it handles the edge cases, like data set with no outliers or data set with missing values. So they all should get treated properly. So for that, we can write the test cases whether my pre-processing script is working properly or not. Okay, with Pytest, we can automate all the checks so to ensure that pipeline work flawlessly. That means before creating your distribution file, automatically Pytest will execute. And if there is any problem that is going on, that maybe some errors maybe some incorrect logic that I did, so Pytest will easily identify that. So what we did, we had learned over here why testing is very crucial in programming and MLOps. We had seen how to write a test case using Pytest. That was a very simple test case we wrote. Obviously, some good test case we're going to write with the machine learning program. Here, I just want that you should understand what is Pytest and how test cases used to be written. And then we had seen how Pytest integrates seamlessly with packaging and setup tools. So start writing the test for your code, and whether it is a simple calculator or a complex machine learning pipeline, we can write these test cases. Now, if you find this tutorial helpful, and please, in that case, don't forget to like, subscribe, and do comment your thoughts, do comment your kind of doubts, and anything that you want to learn from me, just put down into the comment. So stay tuned, happy learning, take care, have a great day ahead.